Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. Friends, so I'd like to talk about something today that might be useful for your practice. It might be a useful contemplation. But rather than starting right out of the gate with a technical term, I thought we'd maybe create a little thought exercise. So I tried to think of the most, Disney kind of G-rated way that a person could die. And what came to mind was a meteor. So imagine you get done today and you're like, okay, I'm feeling pretty good. And you go outside and a meteor lands on you and that's it. No pain, no suffering, just there's a crater. And now in a very also Disney kind of way, you suddenly find yourself standing outside the crater in ghost form going, oh, that's it. You're done. And then there's another person, another ghost person right next to you. And they're like, well, okay, but you get to do it again, right? You can come back. You're like, oh okay. And it seems like you were meditating. You're a good person. You kept some precepts sometimes. So you actually get to choose, right? So this is a thought exercise. So there you are. And what do you choose? Like you're going to come back. You're going to get to do it again. What do you look for? Like, well, living in the city, yeah, things falling out of the sky. Maybe a bit better to live in the mountains. Or, I always wanted to live by the ocean, but I didn't make it to retirement, so I didn't get to. Would you think, I really should have been kinder. I really wish I had, gone to school earlier in my life so I could have a really good career. Maybe I'll do that this time. Maybe you think, I wish I wasn't such a jerk. I wish I had not said so many angry things. And I wish I hadn't been holding grudges. Maybe next time I won't do that. Next time I'll be a bit nicer. Yeah. So this is a question, like, what is it that generates those thoughts? And you can maybe imagine what it's like to look at your life and to say, okay, this was good, this was not so good, but I want this. What is it that generates those wants? What is it that forms this idea of what direction you would want to go from there? And so last Uposatha, I talked about views, and I used the word asava. So the asava of views. And asava is a funny word. It means flow. Some people say it means outflow, and some people say it means inflow, and some people means it's just like flow in all directions. But you can really only say flow because we flow towards things that we want, but we flow away from things that we don't want. And in terms of delusion, we just, like a water balloon, we just kind of flow in all directions. We don't really have much intention when it comes to delusion. But rather than trying to talk about the asavas tonight, as it turns out, that idea of flow is actually related to something that's much more central in the Buddha's teachings, and it's Taṇha. And Taṇha is this idea of thirst. It's this idea of the desire in the terms of the bad desire that we talk about, the aspiration for something that brings us into the suffering in our lives. Taṇha is not a good thing, but it's worth looking at. It's worth really understanding, because if we were in that scenario, a meteor lands, and there we are, we're just looking down, and somebody's like, okay, you can do it again. Probably the first thing we're going to think is not going to be like, I don't want to do that again. It didn't go well. I think I'm out. Nope, I'm done. We're probably going to think, wait, I can have anything? You mean I can be a rich person? I can be a popular person. I can be a famous person. I can be a good person. I can be a bad person. That's probably what we're going to think. But now, why? Why does that happen? And this is Taṇha, and this is what the Buddhist practice is all about, is recognizing the way that things condition each other. And that every time we suffer in life, every time we lose something, or we get old, or we're in pain, or we get sick, and we say, oh, why does it have to be this way? We are at the end of a chain of cause and effect. It's not by accident. We've actually done a lot of things before we got to that unfortunate situation. And if we sort of traced it back and understood that cause and effect relationship, then we would never end up in that situation of suffering. So Taṇha is very important, and so important that the Buddha says it is really what causes suffering. But in another teaching called Dependent Origination, the Buddha actually lays out a bunch of steps. And Taṇha is one part of it, and later on is suffering. So maybe we'll step back from our suffering to Taṇha to maybe get a sense, because it's not as simple as just desire, because we want things, yeah. And this is something, if you actually, because this is something I do, I'm hip. I Googled Taṇha, and I found the Wikipedia entry. And if you in the modern world, if you look up Taṇha in Wikipedia, it talks about the difference between Taṇha and Chanda, because people in the West are really worried. They think that desire is necessary for life. And so desire is maybe not the best word. We have to understand what it is we're talking about here, why this is something that leads to suffering in our life. Yeah. So it started suffering. And let's do what the Buddha did 2,500 years ago. Let's trace it back to this idea of Taṇha. So in order to have suffering, there's loss. Yeah. Well, the simplest form of loss, rather than getting into complicated things that are very specific, is the loss that we all experience. And that's aging and death, right? Nobody is going to get out of that. Nobody has, at least. If they did, we would be taking notes. We would do what they did. But nobody yet in the history of samsara has gotten out of aging and death. But now, what is the one thing that you can say is true for everybody who got old and died? I'm not trying to trick you, but it's a little counterintuitive. They were born.
I was going to say that.
Oh, yeah. It's yeah.
I'm
I'm sure other people thought of that, but then they're like, no, it can't be that simple, right? Yeah, no, it is. That's probably the only thing you can say about everybody who has ever grown old and died, is that they were born. And that's the genius of the Buddha, is he realized that that is the condition for aging and death. You have to be born. If you're not born, you won't grow old and die. So now scientists try to figure out what it is that causes a person to be born. And they take a human body and they dice it up and put all the parts in different places. And they can't figure out why a human body gets up and starts walking around. But everybody everywhere knows that there's a difference. The collection of parts that is a human body doesn't just always walk around. When it dies, it just sits there. Yeah. So this is the reason that scientists are stumped, because there is something that is needed for the body to get up and walk around. And it's not in the physical world. It's already in the mental realm. So at this point, at birth, we're going completely into the mental realm and we're leaving the physical stuff behind. Yeah. So what is the condition for birth? And this is something that we call bhava. It's existence. You have to exist to be born. And again, that's counterintuitive because what does the world tell us? We're born and then we start to exist. In the Buddhist concept, it's the other way around. There needs to be something there that makes the body get up. There has to be a consciousness there saying, I'm going to be something. I'm going to be somebody. I'm going to do it different this time. And then the body gets up and starts, well, first it starts crawling around and wiggling around. And then it gets up and starts walking. And then eventually by the end of its life, it's back to wiggling. So what is an existence? It's a package of characteristics, a package of habits. Say one day you're walking along and you see a cat and you decide to feed it. You're going to say, that's who you are. You're the guy who fed the cat that one time. No, we don't say that necessarily, but say every day you go by a cat and you feed it. And people would say, you're the one who feeds the cat. You know, every day you wear a red shirt, you're like the guy who wears the red shirt. Yeah, that's who you are. So the condition for a consciousness, for an existence, is characteristics. And we call these upadana. These are the things that not that we do once, but the things that we do over and over and over again, help us form our sense of self, of who we are. Without those, it's just things, it's just random, yeah? It's hard to say who we are. And this is one of the interesting things is when we start to develop as a practitioner, we stop looking at people in terms of their habits. Like they're always like this. Or, oh, they're such a mean person. Or, oh, I really like how they're always so kind and always listening so well. We stop doing that. They're always this or they're always that, because we start to let them just be. You know, they're this, and then they're that, and then they're that. But in order to form an idea of self that would take birth, we have to have preferences, we have to have patterns, we have to have habits. Yeah. These are the things that form that sense of self, which then makes us pick up a body and want to act out that sense of self. So what is it? What is that thing that makes us go to the same thing over and over again? What is it that makes us put on the red shirt every day? Yeah. What is the thing that makes us want to live in the mountains and then live by the sea and then live in the city? What is the thing that makes us like Italian food or like Mexican food? Yeah. And now we've arrived at Taṇha, thirst. And this is in the mental realm. And this is the cause of it all. But you see, we had to walk a little bit to get to Taṇha. And so this is not a gross, simple thing. Like we talk about desire, if you can just uproot desire. And it's not hard actually to uproot desire. You know, we just we're not really wanting anything at just this moment. Yeah. Maybe we want to get up, or maybe we want to sit down, or maybe we want to get a drink. But a lot of the time in our life, we're not going to be actively desiring something, and yet Taṇha is pernicious. It's kind of hidden. It's that desire, that want, that craving that will come up out of nothing. Yeah, and that it is that thing which forms the basis of our existence. It's that thing which flows in the direction of suffering. Yeah. Now, coming to understand ourselves and coming to pull apart the intricate web of why we end up in situations we don't want to be in, situations that make us miserable, is to understand this craving, this thirst, this desire. And what is it based on? It's based on feelings. Yeah. But feelings in and of themselves don't lead to suffering. There's pleasant feelings and there's painful feelings and there's neutral feelings. What leads to suffering is when we act on those feelings, yeah? When we move towards the pleasant, when we move away from the unpleasant, when we ignore the unpleasant or the neutral, thinking it's not important. That's Taṇha, yeah? That's the beginning of our problems. We can just have experiences in the world, and they can be nice or they can be not so nice, and that's just life. But the moment we start developing preferences, so like, I want to have that one again, the causal chain has started. The Buddha talked about Taṇha. He divided it into three kinds. He said there is kama Taṇha, which is desire for sense pleasure. So what is this? Well, basically anything, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or even thoughts, attractive thoughts. Yeah, so our relationship to the world. And as it turns out, we wouldn't have been born human beings unless we had a lot of this kind of Taṇha. If we didn't have this kind of Taṇha, we would have been born in a mental realm, right? But we wanted to have red shirts and Italian foods and days by the beach. So that's where we ended up. So this is different for everybody. What is this kind of Taṇha in your life? What is it that creates you through your preferences? Yeah. So if you were just, wherever you are now, if you were just going to be here for the next 12 hours, probably pretty soon you'd start to want something, yeah? You'd start to want a pillow, you just want a glass of water, or you'd want your phone, maybe it's in the other room, yeah? Something would come up. That's probably going to be sense desire, because it's you in a vacuum. It's just you wanting to have an experience. Now, if we can live without that, then meditation becomes possible. You know, moving into the mental realm, kind of letting go of the five senses, and the mind becoming concentrated and bright and pure, and dealing with our thoughts and dealing with our emotions, that can start to happen. So kama Taṇha, or the desire for sensual existence, is actually kind of basic. It's kind of coarse in a way, because it just deals basically with the body getting certain experiences, yeah? And though it's our mind that desires those experiences, we need to have a body to get them. So this is, it's a fairly simple, straightforward, point to point kind of desire, yeah? The thing about kama Taṇha is it's going to be for something different all the time. You know, today we want this kind of food, but tomorrow, because we got that kind of food, we want a different kind of food. It's reflecting, once there was a famous monk who came to visit the monastery I was at, and because he was so famous, people were coming from all over the Bay Area in California and bringing all the best food and banquets every day. And one day, after like days of these banquets, you know, this very famous monk is surrounded by a group of older women who are just kind of swooning. They're like, "Oh, Ajahn, wasn't that the best? Oh, I've never had food so good. And you're getting food from all over the world. It's all gourmet. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it wonderful?" And this monk has been practicing for a long time. He's just like, it's just food. You've eaten before. Why are you still so excited? You're at the end of your life. And this is the reality of kama Taṇha. It is ridiculous if you zoom out a little, right? And this is what we're asked to do. We're asked to look at, do I really need this thing? Yeah? Or is this just one aspect of me wanting an experience? And will it change? If I don't get that one thing in half an hour, am I going to want something different just as intensely? And that's Kamatanha. And so in the moment, it's so obvious, like I need that thing. But when we zoom out, we see this is leading me to suffering. I don't need that thing. What's really going on here is I need a thing. And my mind has decided that that is that thing that I need. And if we work on that desire and that Taṇha, that thirst for the sensual world, then that doesn't happen anymore. We'll have good experiences and we'll have bad experiences and we'll have neutral experiences. But it'll stop right there. Yeah. What's really amazing is that neutral experiences, when we don't ignore them, are actually slightly pleasant. So if we were to do the accounting and we were to get rid of Kamatanha, sense craving, we would, net result, more pleasant experiences, more joy, because the neutral stuff that we've been ignoring would actually become nice. We would be mindful, we would be there for it, because we wouldn't be trying to be over there instead. The second kind of Taṇha that the Buddha points to is called Babatanha. And this is the same kind of bhava that led to birth. So Taṇha, like in terms of flowing, it's flowing in the direction of creating a self, this kind of Taṇha. And what is this like? So now this is not in the central realm. This is not like I want to be, I want to have nice shoes. It's not that kind of Taṇha. It's like, I want to be a person who wears nice shoes. It's like, what is our craving to be something? So imagine there you are, crater, right? Meteor strike. You're standing there. Maybe I should have been a doctor. Yeah. Where does that thought come from? I wish I had traveled more. Yeah. I never really got out of the city. I wish I had traveled less. I wish I had settled down somewhere, made something of myself, developed a household. I wish I lived in a bunker. Then this never would have happened. Yeah. Where does this come from? Well, it comes from Taṇha. The thing about Taṇha is when we boil it down to its deepest experience, it's about feeling, yeah? As we're moving through the world, some things feel good. And we really get the sense that we want to develop them. And some things feel not so good. And we're like, yeah, I don't need any more of that. But those things that feel good are really enticing. And we think, if I were to develop a person around that so that I had more of that, then I would have more pleasant experiences, right? So say we go to a piano concert, yeah? And we hear this wonderful piano music and it's making pleasant sensation arise. And we think, if I learned to play piano, then I would get this pleasant feeling all the time. So we develop a self that learns to play piano. The twist, because there's always a twist in samsara, in the round of rebirth, is that actually learning to play the piano is going to be a mix of pleasant and unpleasant sensations. It's not all going to be pleasant. Some of it might be pleasant. And this is why we keep coming back to it. Is because when we develop some things and we become good at them and we can offer them and people praise us for them, then we really do get pleasant feeling. But why do we have to be attached to it? Yeah. If we were just set down in a room for 12 hours, why would we be like, this is not how I want to live my life, stuck in a room? why would we be discontent? Why would we want to go somewhere and do something? If a meteor fell on us and that's it, that's the story of our life. And he got hit by a meteor at the end. Why would we want to do it again? Why would we say, oh, if I could be that, it would work this time. There would be no meteor if I got it that way. Well, this is worth investigating, yeah? And it's worth investigating, when we have a quiet moment, stepping aside and kind of looking at it, where we can get some perspective on our life and say, what is it I really keep trying to get? Now, one of the clever textbook definitions of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting to get different results. And you see this with somebody who's really stuck on something. They'll do the exact same thing, and they just keep doing it. They'll just keep doing it, just keep doing it. And yeah, if you're ever in like the receiving part of that, like maybe they tell a particular joke and they just keep telling that particular joke, and you're like, okay, I got to snap them out of this. So I'm going to respond different. This time I'm going to laugh. And the next time you frown. The next time you say, you always tell that joke. And the next time you say, oh, I love this joke. Oh, no matter how you respond, they keep telling the joke. Yeah. But that's what we do. This is very essential to how we form a sense of self. We're trying to get a particular experience, and we're ignoring what's actually going on along the way. Because Babatanha is trying to move towards an idea. It's not actually responding to the world. We've already got a sense of what we want. Now, the last and third and also very important kind of Taṇha to understand is called Babatanha. And so this sometimes gets translated as desire for annihilation or desire for non-existence. And people are like, well, I'm no mad scientist. I don't sit around scheming and building death rays. So I don't think I have much desire for annihilation. But what it's dealing with is those things that we don't want. So yeah, we're standing at the crater and we say, I wish I hadn't spent all my time learning how to play the piano. Didn't end up getting me anywhere. Yeah. Or we might say, I wish I hadn't lived in the city, or I wish I hadn't, I wish I hadn't been such a jerk to the people I loved. Yeah. And we might look at the things, we create a sense of self. Yeah. We move towards things in the way we create a sense of self, but there's this weird dynamic that we also create a sense of self around the things that we're moving away from, right? There are things about ourselves we do not like. And it's amazing how much emotional energy gets invested in trying not to be that way and not liking it. Actually, the actual aspect of not liking that part of ourselves causes us to not be able to sit still, causes us to think endlessly, causes us to be filled with regrets. And so this is Babatanha. Where is it in the world that we're trying to break down something or avoid something or make something not be? And even in a vacuum, we might find that we start to try to do this. If we're in a room, we're like, man, this place could be bigger. Yeah, so push the walls out a little, or maybe get a skylight. Yeah, it's too cramped in here. It's too cold. It's too hot. The thing about Babatanha is it's never satisfied. Yeah, and we have this in ourselves. Everybody has this, or you would not have been born. Prerequisite. And so we were born. So therefore, there's these currents in us. Noticing them allows us to get back to the point before they've got an object. Yeah. So whenever we're feeling like, oh man, I can't stand this anymore. What is that experience of not being able to stand it? Can we analyze what that is like? Can we get it away from its object? It's not just that we're sitting here listening to the monk and he's just not done yet, and we're going over the lists, and as soon as he's done, I'm going to be able to stand up and stretch my legs and everything's going to be good again. What is that? What does that feel like? What is the actual sensations in our body? What's the content? What is the vocabulary of the thoughts running through our head? That is the actual experience. And then what is the burning? What is the thirst? What is that desire? And now imagine we're out somewhere and we just spent the whole day, maybe at like a Thanksgiving dinner with our family, and as everybody kind of like doesn't get along and they're very different people. And so we're sitting there and like, I really wish I was at a meditation group right now. I really wish I was around other people who had similar values and similar thoughts. Yeah. So right now we kind of like to get up and stretch and do something different. But if we were doing something different right now, would we want to be doing this? And that's Babatanha. And if we get to understand that experience, then it's very interesting. It's like tonight, some of us are gonna have the opportunity to do a little extra sitting. And this is one of the superpowers of somebody when they develop meditation, is they realize they can be with unpleasant things. And so you can really sit for 2 hours and it's not pleasant. Your knees hurt, your feet fall asleep, you start to drift off, and then you wake up and you start to drift off, and that's not pleasant. Yeah. But that's all it is. If you can find yourself not resisting it, there is this strange sort of joy that arises. Me, like, I'm falling asleep and it's not a problem. And then I'm waking up. And the thing is, waking up actually required that you go through that process of falling asleep, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, it's 11:30 and the stars are out and it's nice and it's quiet. All day it hasn't been quiet. Yeah? And that needed what came before. Yeah, so if we avoided what came before, we would never have gotten that experience. And this is what it's like when we understand Taṇha, when we unravel it, when we quench the fires of thirst that are flowing into the world, that are creating this sense of self. We don't stop existing. Enlightenment doesn't, you see somebody just suddenly and hit the ground and they stop moving. You're like, oh, they became enlightened. They stopped existing. Yeah, so the body just fell over. It's not like that. We keep having all the experiences. What doesn't happen is all the pain, all the thirst, this is me. I'm the guy who wears, baseball caps. I'm the guy who's a doctor. I'm the guy who spent, 30 years living in the woods. There's no story. There's no, it has to be this way, or I can't wait, or I've got to get away from this. This has to stop. There's no more of that. There's just, okay, yeah, this is nice. And then, okay, this is not so nice. Oh yeah, this is nice again. And that's life. It's ups and it's downs, but we're there for it. We're there for all of it. And so what happens when we're just there for all of it? And then the meteor comes. And we've got the crater. And we're standing outside. And there's nothing we need. We feel fulfilled. There's nothing we need to do. Yeah, I ate a lot of things. It was okay. Cake was nice. I wouldn't be born and have to live for years and years on planet Earth just for cake. So I guess I can let that go. And it's like, yeah, I had these experiences. Maybe I had this job, I had this relationship, I had these friends. It was nice. What would it be like to just be like, it was nice? Yeah, that was nice. And it's like, yeah, I screwed up some things. but that's okay. What would it be like to be like, yeah, I was really a jerk, huh? It was a waste of time. And just not hold it against us and not create a self. Well, what would happen is an unraveling of this whole process. What would happen if we never went back in, if we never picked up another body and went through it again? Well, what wouldn't happen is aging and death and loss. What would happen? Well, it's really impossible to describe that. And that's why we don't have to get into complicated explanations there. Well, no, I get that. I get birth and aging and death. I understand that. I'm living it, really. I get it. But what is the opposite? We can't describe it. And the Buddha said it's like, well, when a candle flame goes out, do you say, oh, where did it go? Which way did it go? Did anybody see which way it went? No, that would be silly. It didn't go anywhere. It just stopped. Yeah. This is the same word, nibbana or nirvana. It just, what would it be if it just stopped? Well, all the stuff would still be there. The wick, the oxygen, the warmth. There just wouldn't be that thing. Yeah. And we're not used to thinking in that way. So we don't have to get into complicated, but what we can know is the Taṇha. We can know the burning. We can know the excitement and the being scattered and consuming and pain. We can know that, and we can know how to remove the conditions for that. Yeah? That's what we can do. And we don't know when the meteor is going to come. We don't know if it'll come. Some of us might get hit by a truck. Some of us might have a house fall on us. Who knows? Who knows what it'll be? All we know is what we can deal with right now. It's like what is creating the problems in our lives. Yeah. Right. So these are some thoughts, reflections to take with you, and you'll hear these terms again in your life. And I hope maybe this helps flesh them out a little. Maybe it's something you can think about and investigate. And if it's useless, then just leave it. All right.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.